Like what hypnosis is actually good for.
If there's anything that I want people to know with hypnosis is...
Why do you think people are afraid of hypnosis or have fear?
I think hypnosis is not something that I do to a person. Hypnosis is something that they do to themselves. I just guide them through that process.
How do you see visualization in this context? Do you think it's more powerful to do hypnosis with eyes closed, for example?
Yes, and the reason why is because...
Or you mentioned the word placebo, and I've been so fascinated because, like, for one, why don't we study the placebo more? Like when people say, oh, that's just placebo, it's like, good.
Right, yeah.
So what in your mind is the placebo effect?
The subconscious mind is so powerful, man, because when you anticipate a precursor to something, and that something like the doctor's going to give me the medicine that'll make me better, then driving to the doctor's going to make you feel better. Sitting in the waiting room is going to make you feel better. Talking to the nurse is going to make you feel better. Wow, now you're super relieved that the doctor's walked in. He gives you the medicine. He could have given you sugar pills.
Can you do a little guided hypnosis right now to end this for like something, if somebody has maybe something they want to change or they want to feel a certain way? Is there something that they can experience hypnosis for themselves while they're listening now, as long as they're not driving?
Yeah, don't do it if you're driving.
John, good to see you.
You
Good
too,
to
man.
meet you again.
Yeah, dude.
Unfortunately, only for this hour that we have together, but it is what it is. I came here, and even 6 days was, I guess, the perfect time, but I have more to do. I need to come back.
Yeah, Austin will do that to you.
Yeah, so incredible. I wanted to ask you if you could like kind of explain a little bit more like what hypnosis is actually good for. Especially like I've had incredible experiences with it, NLP included, but a lot of people are like the stage hypnosis, like that's their belief.
Right.
So like, I guess with what you do, you use hypnosis for like therapy and for helping people. So I guess the question is, what is something that you wish everybody knew about hypnosis?
Well, first and foremost, I wish that people could get over the preconceived notion of it being the clock swinging or the pocket watch, or because it gets stuck in between either being nothing more than a stage trick or some sort of occult mysticism. And at the end of the day, hypnosis, as I understand it and as I use it, it's a means to communicate and interact with the subconscious mind. The relevancy of communicating with the subconscious mind is the subconscious is best thought of as the storage unit for everything outside of your conscious awareness. So the things that you're not presently thinking about, all of your memories, your imagination, it's also the thing that houses our identity, our values, our beliefs, and the programming for our behavior. So understand that hypnosis fundamentally is just a way to communicate. It's how we're structuring words together, especially when you dive into something like neuro-linguistic programming, right? Because then it is the thought of, okay, what words can I use in what way to help impact the person that I'm talking to for the better? And then using hypnosis in a therapeutic manner, it comes down to establishing a win-win. How can I help the client succeed? How can I help the client get what they want most easily, most effectively, and efficiently, right? Because hypnosis is one of those things that when used properly can enact change really, really quickly. You know, so you do want to have someone who knows what they're talking about, but if there's anything that I want people to know with hypnosis is there's nothing to worry about. It's very easy to use. You're entering into trance states naturally throughout the day. It's a naturally occurring phenomenon. We're going to enter into a trance state together if we're not already in one. The people listening, the people watching, they're going to enter into a trance state just by watching, just by listening, because that's what the brain does to focus in on things. And hypnosis is just, it's a utilization of those trance states.
It's all about suggestions, essentially, right? And this is where you can't, like, people are afraid of hypnosis. Like, I'm worried what he's going to do to me, but you wouldn't ever take on a suggestion that you didn't want to, right? Or
Correct.
Is that accurate?
Yes. So part of the job of the hypnotist is to help people accept suggestions, because there are cases where you're working on something that the client doesn't necessarily want. They have something preventing them from accepting it, despite the fact that they have admitted that they want to accept it. So when working with something like a bad habit or a vice, the person will come to me and they'll go, I want to quit this. That's what they know they want, but they have a whole host of things working in the back that's saying, actually, I don't want to quit this. So going into it at a subconscious level, there is a matter of convincing them so that they can accept the suggestion. But in its truest form, or in its simplest form, hypnosis is the masterful crafting of a suggestion that someone will want to accept. Knowing more about what's going on in the back burner and the systems of the subconscious mind will help you craft those suggestions so that people can take them. But by using this means of suggestion, it could be as simple as telling someone, like, you want a steak dinner tonight. And it's like, oh, yeah, I do. I really could go for a steak dinner tonight. You know, there's not an awful lot of apprehension toward that unless someone has dietary restrictions or dietary preferences. But even then, you can enter into a dialogue on, well, steak is good for you for these reasons and these reasons. And while that might sound like logical debriefing or a logical discussion, ultimately, all types of reasoning, we first have to reason with the subconscious mind, and then the conscious mind can follow through. We see that especially in things like sales, right? We make decisions to buy based on emotion. We justify it with logic later. Or you get someone caught up on deliverables, the things that they're getting, the timetables, what are the details of the package, when talking specifically about sales. But with suggestion, yeah, hypnosis is just, how can I make a suggestion to this person so that they want to accept it.
Interesting. Why do you think people are afraid of hypnosis or have fear?
I think a lot of the fear that people have around hypnosis is because their preconceived notion, again, is inaccurate. They are thinking of it as some type of mind control. They are thinking it as a means where the hypnotist is trying to get them something to do that they don't want to do, or they've heard that, it's a manipulation tactic, or these other things come in and it gets in the way of being able to benefit from hypnosis because they once saw the movie where the bad guy used hypnosis, or their church friends told them that hypnosis is of the devil, or whatever it is. There's something that they see in their mind, which is ironically hypnosis itself, about what hypnosis is. But then they come in and it's like, no, we're just going to have a conversation. Like, I don't need you to close your eyes. You can close your eyes if you want to. You can close your eyes if you find that feels very natural to you, but you don't have to. And then we just enter into a conversation. So part of the demystifying of hypnosis, at least now in the present day, because I'm seeing hypnosis become more and more mainstream, at least in smaller corners, which I think is wonderful, but that does come with ironically logical discussions to help appease the conscious mind. That's where you can talk about things like theta waves. People's brains emit theta waves when they're in trance state. Well, did you know the first 60 hours of your day and the last 60 hours of your day, your brain is emitting those theta waves. You're in a trance state. Hypnosis is not something that I do to a person. Hypnosis is something that they do to themselves. I just guide them through that process. It's reaching more mainstream hypnosis now, where we all understand collectively that hypnosis it's a self-experience. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. The hypnotist is just guiding you. All I do is I shine a light on my client's paths and I show them the way.
Interesting. So if theta waves are the beginning and end of the day, this is why it's so vital to not be programming yourself with your phone.
Right.
For example, first thing in the morning. This is also why meditation is more powerful at the beginning or the end of the day, or meditation, visualization, and things like that. How do you see visualization in this context, whether it's self-hypnosis or how do you interpret visualization in this regard?
So I see visualization through my lens of hypnosis as a form of hypnosis, as a form of self-hypnosis. Now, I also just so happen to believe that any type of therapy that works because it is a type of hypnosis, because at the end of the day, change must happen at an emotional level. We experience emotions differently than most people think, because emotions have sensations and there's a collective experience tied to those emotions. But then visualization, it becomes your own personal simulation, or it becomes your own personal fantasy. So we enter into these self-visualization experiences all the time as well. I don't know about you, but I find myself thinking about what's going to happen before it happens. In the past, this led to a lot of anxiety, because I would think about things that I didn't want to have happen. And because of that, I was subjecting myself to that. This experience of anxiety would come up because I'm anticipating the worst. I'm now programming and predicting myself to have unpleasant experiences. And when that happens, because when the subconscious mind sees something, you're going to unconsciously bring yourself to that coming into existence. So by using a visualization technique, see what you want to have happen to you and imagine what that's like very vividly, you're then going to start to train your own subconscious mind and then your actions to get you closer to what you want. That's where you get into things like, different people will call that manifestation, or different people will call that the law of attraction. You're just fundamentally programming yourself to see what you want so that you're more likely to do what you have to do to get what you want.
Like the reticular activating system? Program yourself to see what you want?
Run that by me. I know it by name.
I buy a red Tesla, and then right after I buy it, there's red Teslas everywhere. When they were always there, but I didn't notice them until it was in my reticular activating system.
Yeah, that's a similar idea for sure. That's more of a conscious real world thing, but it is true because when you see it more up here in your mind's eye, you're gonna see it more out here. That's just how it is. That's just how it works.
Yes. Okay. Why do you think it's more powerful to do hypnosis with eyes closed, for example?
Yes, and the reason why is because you're able to increase your inward focus. But that being said, I have had clients that have entered into very profound trance states while keeping their eyes open. Sometimes it's a matter of me judging what the client is expecting, but I'll also outright ask. I have had clients that have pursued working with me purely because they know that it's very hypnosis heavy. And when I hear that, I then ask, do you want to do trance work? And they're like, oh yeah, we got to do trance work. Because part of what's going to make hypnosis effective is their preconceived notions, again, about hypnosis, what they expect to happen. If I do that, the experience is automatically more hypnotic for them. So if someone is like, bro, I got to do trance work, I have to have my eyes closed, I'm going to do that with them because I know it's going to be more powerful for them. If they're a little bit more apprehensive to it, it's more of a light trance, eyes still open, things are still happening. You can get into a discussion like Milton H. Erickson was very forward in the approach of using things like storytelling as opposed to classic trance inductions, which we now know they do work just as well as eyes closed. But when it does come to closing your eyes, you're then able to more easily focus on the experience of the trance state, the experience of the hypnosis, see what you have to see. For example, I'm a lot more likely to visualize if my eyes are closed. I tend to be more auditorial. I tend to be more kinesthetic. Visualization is not my strong suit. So to really tap into that, I would close my eyes. But there are other people that can just see things very clearly. Daydreaming, you've probably seen the meme with the apple, on a scale of 1 to 5, the apple is picture perfect, super clear, and then you don't see an apple at all. If I see an apple, it's because I have a memory of an apple. I often don't create an original, or I'm superimposing. I could see an apple down on the ground over there, but that's because my mind has got a memory of an apple and I'm singling in on the apple from that memory, and then I'm superimposing the apple into what I'm seeing. I'm more likely to see it if I close my eyes, but I'm also pulling up a memory of an apple. I've not created a new apple, but that's just how my mind works.
Sure, and everybody's is different, and this is why whenever you work with a new client or whatever, you typically want to figure out if they're more visually, auditory, or kinesthetic dominant.
Yes, that does play into rapport building. So part of the hypnosis experience is how can I help my client trust me to the best of my abilities, and how can I enhance their experience so that it is more hypnotic? And that is when you will discuss the different modalities that they're using. Are they visual? Are they kinesthetic? Are they auditorial? People do have a dominance in those areas. I'm more dominantly kinesthetic, and then I'm secondarily auditorial. But that being said, everybody's technically kinesthetic because everybody's having an emotional experience. Some people just experience those emotions more powerfully as the emotion itself, a visualization of the emotion, or they have to hear something for it to click. So when you find out when you're working with someone what clicks most for them, just simply using that language is going to establish a stronger sense of rapport, which then is going to increase the suggestibility of what you're saying so that they can receive it. You don't have to do it, but it's like if we were having a conversation where you were telling me about how great the Austin city skyline looks and all the colors and all these beautiful things about it, and I was like, yeah, and the sound of traffic is just so annoying. You'd be like, what? But then ironically, you'd also enter into a trance state because that was enough of a pattern interrupt to kind of discombobulate you and get you to think inwardly. But it's still, rapport is broken. Or if I said, yeah, the city really stinks, it's like, I could have just said, yeah, it looks great, doesn't it?
Interesting. Yeah, so pattern interrupt, I think they're incredible. I mean, that's what stops the scroll and gets people to look at something in general. But I had never even thought about a pattern interrupt being a different representation of the world. So how else would you describe, or what are other examples of a pattern interrupt that is in our everyday life?
That's a good question. So a pattern interrupt can be anything that makes you pause. If I were to go to shake your hand and I then like slapped your hand or did something else, you're going to go into a pattern interrupt. Sometimes I like to pattern interrupt people just because, like if my right hand if I'm holding my phone or something and someone goes to shake my hand, I'm shaking my hand with I'm shaking their right hand with my left hand because it's funny to me. Like I like to do those minor pattern interrupts. Or if someone were to go, hi, my name is, and you were to say, anything other than what your name is, you can observe, they'll pause. They're like, I don't really know what to do now because they've entered into a state of hypnosis. So everyday pattern interrupts, it really is anything that you weren't expecting because we are creatures of habit. We're going to create habits that work well for us and we're going to stick to those habits. When those habits are disrupted, it's also then a pattern interrupt. And then we're going to fall into that momentary inward reflection, which is a trance state. And then we're going to ponder, we're going to wonder, and it's like, I got to get back to what I'm doing. So, a common pattern interrupt, you're in a deep work state. You get a call or you get a text message, and it takes you out of it. It's like, I gotta check this. And it's like, okay, what was I doing? And then you forget, and then you get back into it 15 minutes later, and you're disrupted.
Okay. You mentioned Milton Erickson already. So Ericksonian hypnosis is almost always eyes open, just talking story and metaphor. Why does that work? And can you explain it better than just that, or at a higher level, and also why it works?
So think of the classic tales that we've all grown up seeing and hearing and the lessons that those tales tell us. I think a good example would be the first Star Wars film, A New Hope. We have a very clear representation and distinction between good and evil. We have a very obvious hero's journey story that's teaching us the importance of fighting against evil. And then we also see, as those films progress, the importance of good being strong enough to go in and, in a way, intercede and approach evil to get good out of people. Erickson hypnosis works because to tell a story masterfully and craftfully is to do so in a way that the patient or the client is going to experience themselves in. This is where things like ambiguous language is very helpful. If you tell an ambiguous story to the masses, you're going to be able to reach more people because of that. There's a classic example of this is the parables that Jesus spoke in Scripture. He's speaking in such a way where there's always a lesson. Sometimes lessons aren't very obvious, but there's always a lesson in there. And then people are able to discern meaning from that lesson, often a very profound thing that people weren't expecting to learn, especially if you continue to read into Scripture, you'll see that it was the disciples that then asked for the meaning. Christ would teach in these parables, and then the people would dismiss. And the disciples would be like, what the heck did you mean? And then he'd tell people, right? We're dealing with the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So to tell a story, when telling a story to help someone reach a conclusion, you tell it in such a way that they can see themselves in. In business, this works really well with testimonials. A well-written testimonial, the prospect is going to be able to read that testimonial from the client's view, and it's going to help them realize that they can now see themselves in the program, and they can see the program working for them because it worked for someone else. What's interesting about this is if I were to tell you a story about yourself, it requires a lot more convincing. Unless we've already established rapport, we've already established trust. If I were to tell you a story about someone else, it's a lot more easy for you to believe because you then see that other person and those experiences. But by imagining those other experiences, you also have to put yourself into those experiences. And then from that alone, you're going to benefit from the story. So there's a lot that goes into storytelling, but in its simplest form, anytime we tell stories and someone listens and we find them nodding their heads, they give us the mm-hms and other such things, they've entered into a state of hypnosis. Storytelling is wonderful. You can get into really advanced tactics. If you have someone who's really stubborn, you can tell them a story of someone who is opposite of them and a different problem, and they'll be like, yeah, they'll start to really agree. And if they don't get along, then you can break their generalizations. People will get stuck in only being able to see their point of view. Tell it to them from the other person's point of view, or tell them a parallel example from a different, or tell, like if you have something that you're working through and they can't see it, tell a different situation that's very similar and ask them, like, how does that make you feel? Oh, that doesn't make me feel very good. And then, like, that's literally what you're doing. Like, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's a very strong way to break the generalizations. But storytelling is effective because you're tapping into the subconscious mind's ability to impose themselves into the story. And then when masterfully, you're able to then introduce belief changes, new ideas, different paths for the person to take. And then from there, this is what Erickson excelled at, was they would take this and then they would go on their own way. If you want to get into the actual tactic of using these stories, what you want to do is you want to tell the story, and you want the story to end when your session ends, and you want to, as quickly as possible, get them out and get them on their way. So there's not much time for them to sit there and digest, talk too much about it. You want them to reach their own conclusions, and then for them to come back to you and tell you what had happened. You can also, because that's also a pattern interrupt. You get them out of the story, out of the experience, and then if you talk about something completely unrelated, like I'll do this with clients, I'll talk to them about something completely unrelated at the end of a call, wrap it up, send them on their way. Some clients respond really well to that. Some clients get a little too confused by it. So again, there's tactic. This is why working with someone is always superior to trying to do it on your own, because the coach is going to be able to see what you can't, and I'm able to recognize patterns and see like, oh, this is what you need. I'm going to do this. And then after the fact, I'll tell the client, hey, I did this because this, and you responded to it this way. Here's how to do it yourself. Because I'm a coach too. I want people to be able to go and learn it and do it on their own.
Yeah. Do you have like hypnosis tracks or things like that is kind of more of like a do-it-yourself type of thing that you provide either clients with or people with?
So I have one track that I did create. I think I've only promoted it a handful of times. It was an anti-burnout track, and there were some suggestions in there to help people disconnect from their screens. Generally speaking, no, I don't have pre-recorded audio tracks that I send to clients, but I have had a few clients that have requested call recordings, and then they'll listen back over to those call recordings, especially if there is a long stretch where I'm doing a long form trance with them. Then they can go back and listen to that. But at this time, I don't have any pre-recorded recordings as like a prescription. Like, hey, listen to this once a day. So I don't have anything like that.
Do you believe in like early in the morning programming your subconscious mind with an affirmation track or something like that?
Yes. And the reason why, again, it comes back to You're already in a trance state when you wake up. This is why we need to avoid scrolling as much as possible when we wake up in the morning. If you're gonna scroll, at least make sure that it's productive, right? Like I'll check my phone in the morning, and I'm gonna do the quick Twitter check. I'm gonna do the Telegram check, and then I'm gonna go move on and do something else. I find that journaling in the morning and the evening is the best utilization of my daily trance states, because I'm able to interact with words, I'm able to interact with language. And because of the presence of these theta waves and the increased suggestibility of the subconscious mind in the morning, yes, use your affirmations, and you're going to experience a greater benefit from those. Now, that being said, if you miss the morning, still use them. The subconscious is still responsive. Is it more responsive in the morning? Yes. But should that stop you from using them at 3 p.m., 4 p.m.? No. Keep using them.
Interesting. I used to have, well, I still have a mindset folder, like a vision board that I have recorded in my own voice. And something I found that was really interesting, and it seemed to work even better, was I would overlay that with doing Wim Hof breath work. So like my conscious mind is focusing on the breath work, and the affirmations are coming in. And I've also seen in hypnosis, like recordings and whatnot, a lot of times they'll have like a different ear thing going on, because that bypasses the critical faculty. Is that the reason why?
Yeah, you're overwhelming the conscious mind. The conscious mind has to shut off. The subconscious mind is able to focus more. There are very effective. There's a few. Jason Andrews on Twitter @BasedHypnotist. He does his hypnosis audio recordings in that manner, where it's 2 separate scripts, one ear, other ear, and it's so much going on that the conscious mind just like shuts off, and then the subconscious mind listens. And because both of those are crafted with hypnotic language patterns, it's just a hypnosis double whammy.
Now, does somebody have to worry about picking up suggestions that don't serve them?
So no, the answer is no. Now, that being said, so I know that I'm highly suggestible. This is something that I've learned about myself. This is also something that I have to be careful about myself. If I'm conversing with someone that I trust, they can influence me more easily than others. This does not happen with random people, because I'm like, no, that idea is stupid. You're wrong. But if it's someone that I trust, like a coach, it's like, oh, you might be onto something. I hadn't thought of it like that. I really like that. It's very easy for me to take on those types of suggestions. It also happens with family. It also happens in romantic relationships. So, but with things that I specifically don't want, there are some safety protocols that I use, namely, does the suggestion give me peace, or does it cause more doubt and more disturbances? And if something causes doubt, where it's like an uneasiness, it's like, I will reject that.
Interesting. I was working with somebody who taught me that belief is a technology, and that doubt prevents belief technology from working, which I thought was incredible.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it. I would agree with that.
Cool. So some people will say that they can't be hypnotized, right? Everybody can be hypnotized, in my opinion. And it's just that they're probably labeling it as stage hypnosis, or maybe they're less suggestible, or somebody told them either they can't hypnotize them or you're less suggestible. What is that just a spectrum of how suggestible we are?
Well, so there's definitely different trains of thought on that. You have things like the Spiegel eye roll test that David Spiegel Sr. came up with. I heard about that for the first time on the Huberman podcast that Huberman did with Dr. David Spiegel Jr., I believe, who I think is also one of the Harvard professors out there. Very smart. The eye roll test is you look up and you have someone close their eyes, and depending on how slowly their eyelid closes, it'll determine how suggestible they are. So if the eyes close really slowly, it means they're more susceptible to hypnosis. Can someone not be hypnotized? I would say that they've been hypnotized into thinking they can't be hypnotized. So it's paradoxical in effect. It's ironic, really, because someone will so adamantly believe they can't be hypnotized. No, I can't be hypnotized. There's no way. I'm actually not hypnotizable. It's like, who told you that? Someone. They don't come to that conclusion on their own. They've been suggested. And then there, of course, are ways to work around that. If someone's really stubborn, I can't be hypnotized. okay, I want you to not do, or I want you to do the opposite of what I tell you to do. And then you can kind of overwhelm them. Don't close your eyes. Don't relax. Don't breathe slower. Don't, right? We know the subconscious mind doesn't understand don't. It's going to do the opposite. If you tell someone to do the opposite, you could actually really have fun with that if you really wanted to, if someone's really stubborn. But everyone can be hypnotized. Everybody is susceptible to suggestion. Different levels vary, but again, that's where we dive into the topic of rapport building. Rapport is best summarized as meet them where they're at. If they are apprehensive to hypnosis, work with that in their model of their worldview, meet them there, and help them work through that. Sometimes that is as simple as finding the closest thing to hypnosis that they do employ and call it that and use that. Oh, I don't believe in hypnosis. I much prefer to do meditation. Okay, let's do a guided meditation together. Those kinds of things.
That's simple. Okay. So Vipassana meditation is the 10-day silent retreat. I was talking to a girl that I met there about being interested in NLP and hypnosis, and she's like, do you put that on the form when you apply to these things? She's saying basically like that's a disqualifier to some degree if you're into hypnosis, or you tell them that you've been studying hypnosis or something like that. What do you think they're scared of?
So if it's an intellectual discussion, technically hypnosis is labeled as pseudoscience. I would go as far as to say that it's been labeled as pseudoscience because you can take a lot of money from certain medical institutions when you employ hypnosis. Some of its most well-studied use cases are in things like pain killing. It's a great anesthetic. It used to be used all the time, but because it works so well and there's no money in it, all I have to do is talk to someone. There are studies and there are sciences to suggest, to imply that it doesn't work. So some of the skepticism comes there, especially if you're engaging with an intellectual, like, oh, it's harder to prove. But then there are just as many studies that you can cite where it shows there are people that do have improved experiences because of hypnosis. You know, call it a placebo, call it a nocebo, call it whatever you want to. There's no denying the power of the subconscious mind. Someone's skepticism can come from multiple different things. In the case that you're speaking to with hypnosis or neurolinguistic programming being a disqualifier or discouraging meditation, it's because they have a flaw in their understanding of what hypnosis is. Because for someone to engage in self-meditation, to listen to any kind of meditation track, it's literally no different than hypnosis. Now, there might be some differences in technique. There may not be as many pauses, or it may not be as many changes in the tonality, the enunciation, the emphasis placed on which word at what point in the sentence, and those types of things, but it's still hypnosis.
Interesting. Yeah, my response was like, wait, if you're completely against something, like, doesn't that sound like a cult? And she didn't like that at all. Because I was like, why are you completely opposed to some other modality that is useful? Like this, you're telling me this is the only path to enlightenment or whatever. And I think that everything works to a degree.
Right.
Now, you talked about you mentioned the word placebo. And I've been so fascinated because, like, for one, why don't we study the placebo more? Like when people say, oh, that's just placebo, it's like, good.
Right, yeah.
So what in your mind is the placebo effect?
Well, simply it's believing that it's going to work. If I tell you that a super secretly formulated pill is going to cure you of some sickness or dysfunction, and you're sold on that pill working, but it's just a capsule I filled with sugar, and your mind knows what to expect and your mind knows what's going to happen, the mind's going to do what the mind does best. It's going to fix itself. It's going to heal itself. Placebo is just an extra strong belief about the thing working.
I've heard that even just the process of going to the doctor, sitting in the weight room, going and talking to the nurse, and then talking to the doctor in the lab coat is a placebo in and of itself, because we expect that it's going to work, or I go to a doctor to get better, and because I have that expectation, then I get better.
Right.
which is so interesting.
Yeah. That in and of itself is just part of the hypnosis induction. That whole experience. It's mononymous. It's it's set up in such a way because it's what they expect. If what the subconscious mind is so powerful, man, because when you anticipate a precursor to something, and that something like the doctor's gonna give me the medicine that'll make me better, then driving to the doctor's gonna make you feel better. Sitting in the waiting room is gonna make you feel better. Talking to the nurse is gonna make you feel better. Wow, now you're super relieved that the doctor's walked in. He gives you the medicine. He could have given you sugar pills. Who knows?
Incredible. There's people who, like, I don't know how it works exactly. You probably know the exact story, but you can hypnotize somebody you can get a physical reaction on the skin. Like, you can get that, like, tell them that, hey, this pen is a hot coal, and you can actually get them to, like, have a welt or something appear that they created in their mind, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Because I primarily do hypnosis over calls, I don't have any experience eliciting such a response, but it is possible.
Sure. Okay. And how does pain reduction, you just suggest that it's actually not as painful, or do you first fully associate them into the pain and then dial it back?
There's a story in, I believe it's My Voice Will Go With You, which is a recollection of the teaching tales of Milton Erickson, which is a great book to read in and of itself. It's going to hypnotize you a lot. It did me. I recommend this book to a lot of people who are interested in hypnosis. But there's a story where there's a patient who's experiencing a lot of pain, tremendous pain. In fact, they're hospitalized because of their pain. And Erickson speaks to them about this pain. And he gets to know more about them, and he gets to know more about the pain. And they keep talking about the pain and how terrible it is. But they tell Erickson about this pain in regards to the sounds, the things that they're hearing. And Erickson makes a suggestion to them. He goes, I want you to imagine there's a cat that is protecting you from this pain, and the cat is under your bed, and it's purring. The purring sounded very similar to the other sounds. Because there was a new association tagged onto those sounds, the patient experienced a significant reduction in pain. And at one point they even asked, I think it was a lady, they even asked the lady, like, you're not having as much pain. What happened? And she said, there's the cat's under my bed, and it's protecting me. I hear it's purring, and it soothes me. So there is an aspect of pain reduction where you're working with the sensation of the pain. And then there's also the aspect of it where a deep enough trance state, the single suggestion can be powerful enough. You can induce someone into a trance, say they want to break a bad habit, induce them so deeply, and you simply tell them, you don't smoke anymore. Light bulb goes off, ding, ding, ding. That's all it took. In other cases, you might work more with the sensation, the colors, the sounds, the feelings, those types of things, which is usually what I like to do. It's also a lot of fun to work with colors and sounds and sensations. And then I induce people into deeper trances because I'm trying to work on different things. There are certain drawbacks to the single suggestion approach, or to just making the suggestion. Because the more that you interact with when working with a client or working with a patient, the less potential fallout there it is. Because especially when dealing with a bad habit, say someone wants to quit cigarettes, if you just suggest to them you're no longer a smoker, but then 6 months later that really stressful thing happens and it keeps happening, and they used to smoke to cope with it. If they now no longer have a way to cope with it, the feeling is still there, the anxiety is still there, the stress is still there, they might pick up smoking again.
If they don't have a more empowering habit or something like that, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is where, so I'm not a subconscious mind absolutist. I do believe the conscious mind plays a role. I think the conscious mind gets stuck, and I think the conscious mind employs strategies and solutions that don't work as well as subconscious strategies. But at the end of the day, when breaking a bad habit, you must find a way to do the job better than the vice once did. There's a lot that you can do at a subconscious level to make that transition very easy, very pain-free, very enjoyable. But at the end of the day, we're all going to find ourselves in moments where the real power we employ is the power of choice. It's us going, I'm going to do this instead, and sticking to it.
Okay. I want to go into a little bit the differences, or if there are differences, or what your interpretation is of neurolinguistic programming versus hypnosis. But before that, I wanted to ask, what I learned in neurolinguistic programming is the subconscious mind wants to keep us safe, obviously. And so when you can explain when you can start with, hey, every habit or every action has a positive intent, and when you can acknowledge the positive intent and then explain to the subconscious why that's actually harming them, then they're more likely to adopt an actual change. Right? Did I miss anything as far as, like, is that accurate with your model or your map?
So the model, the map that I have is the subconscious wants to keep you safe. It does the best job that it can with what it knows and with what it has. To break your bad habit, you must thank your subconscious mind for doing that job well, for taking care of you, and for serving its purpose. And then you can let it know that I'm going to take care of the job now. I have this under control. I'm going to keep myself safe and protected. And then you can employ the new habit. You can do that as a conscious choice. You can also continue to work with the subconscious mind to let it know more about the new habit, the new way to use it. Do you understand when it's time to use it? You can get into binaries. If you're going to do this with someone, the best way to do it is just get a yes/no response from them. You can set up, if someone's in a trance state and you're using these NLP techniques, or if you're just using them with their eyes open, let them know, like, I want you to say yes to me, how you know yes best. I want you to tell no to me, how you know no best. That might be a head nod for yes. That might be a head nod for no. Or they might, some people like to do anything like, oh, tell me when you're
really.
Yeah, they'll dive into where it's like they'll say, give me a sign for yes. And sometimes you have to really look for it. Sometimes the person could blush. Sometimes they could raise an eyebrow. It could be any type of subtle movement. I find it's just easier to tell them it could be a head nod. And they're like, it could be a head nod. And they give you the head nod. Because that way it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to miss that versus them giving you an actual head nod. Sometimes it's a really small head nod. Sometimes it's more of a classic head nod. But if you can effectively suggest anything for yourself as the hypnotist or the programmer to make it easier for you to do your job. You just have to do it. You just have to say it. So with that model, yes, the subconscious mind is doing its job. Now it's time to do the job better. You can do that with subconscious programming. You can do that with new techniques, with new tactic. I find a blend of the two to work well, especially when working with men, because you want to empower their ability to exercise agency, and you want to empower their ability to take responsibility to course correct. Because a man who doesn't believe that he can fix the problem is not going to fix the problem. If that means you're going to increase their pain response, if that means you're going to increase the perceived benefit, you kind of find what works best for people. Similarly on sales calls, I'm sure that you've taken sales calls where you recognize the prospect's a lot more responsive to painful stuff than to positive stuff. I'm sure you've seen it the opposite, where they're a lot more responsive to positive stuff and a lot less responsive to the painful stuff. Similarly, figure out how the client responds best and just double down.
Meet them with where they're at.
Right.
Be flexible in your communication and figure out the language they use or whatever they will interpret best, as opposed to whatever your modality is, so that way they can understand it fully. Incredible. Okay. So if somebody wants to do like self-research to understand and learn more about hypnosis, you already mentioned My Voice Will Go With You. Is that what it's called? What else is like that? It's obviously, it's the first one you mentioned. It's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah. My Voice Will Go With You is an excellent book. If you want to learn about hypnosis and you want to learn about how to use hypnosis, start with Monsters and Magical Sticks by Dr. Stephen Heller. There's a co-author in there. I don't remember the co-author's name. I cannot recommend any web articles because most of the web articles are going to be anti-persuasive because they're going to try to debunk hypnosis. Like, there's a very unhelpful article online. If you search, should Christians use hypnosis? It gives like the 5 untruest reasons for why. Like, oh, it's mind control. Oh, you're letting someone do what only God is supposed to do. Oh, they're going to make you do things that you don't want to do. Also, it's occult mysticism. Like, don't use occult mysticism. So the resources you have to be picky about. If you honestly want to learn about what hypnosis is and isn't, I would recommend looking at hypnosis from the people that I've learned hypnosis from. You can find them on Twitter at Based Hypnotist for Jason Andrews, Joshua Lysick for business or hypnosis in business, and then Clint Nolan at Clintism for a very, very, very positive outlook on what hypnosis is, and then of course me, and then
Incredible. So do you teach it? I know you use hypnosis as therapy. Do you, and helping people quit, specifically porn, or that's like the main modality, but do you teach hypnosis as well?
So not in the formal sense, but in the sense of I teach people how to use it for the use cases that they want to use it on themselves. I don't have any kind of specific program to teach someone hypnosis, but I'm capable of teaching people how to use it because I have, just not in the here's a program on hypnosis. Now that being said, I've actually recently been thinking about it, if I were to write another book, it would be a book about hypnosis. If I were to create a type of program, I would create a program to teach people the basics of hypnosis so that they can begin to use it on themselves and use it on themselves in the most powerful, most potent forms possible.
I see.
Because in my own book, I'm teaching them self-hypnosis techniques. A lot of them are pen and paper heavy, in part because I'm very responsive to pen and paper type exercises. There are certain things that I have learned from reading the NLP founder books that if I could teach, and I will, one day I will, if I could teach in such a way, I'll be the next Tony Robbins. I think Tony Robbins is a little outdated now. I think that hypnosis has to be reframed for people in our modern society because, again, it comes down to rapport. You can build rapport with the individual. You can build rapport with the community. You can build rapport with the society. You can build rapport beyond that. And in part because we now have to deal with people's short attention spans. And really, it's just a matter of people know where they want their attention to go. They will watch something that's longer if they're interested. But to catch people, to be highly effective with people, if you can use more of those pattern interrupts, I like to blend humor. I'll make jokes that are super hypnotic. It just happens. I don't even think I could tell you how I'm doing it. I just know that when I do it, I'm like, I know what I did. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I want to be able to do it right now, which is part of the cool part. The more you learn hypnosis, if you're really good at hypnosis, it is because it is so ingrained in your own subconscious mind that it just happens. A classic example is Milton H. Erickson. The dude didn't just use hypnosis. The guy was hypnosis. I mean, he was masterful at it. The stories that he teaches, the books that you can read on his techniques and other such things, it's almost difficult to go through and like truly piece together the systems. I do personally have an emphasis on looking at systems and reviewing systems so that I can teach systems. But it is the more and more you use it, the more and more ingrained it gets, and the more and more it is just, they'll be like, how do you do this? And it's like, just let me do it to you. They'll be like, what is hypnosis? I'm like, can I just do it to you instead? Can I give you an example of what it is? Like, oh, okay. Like, I went on a retreat last weekend, and, I used the H word, and people were like, whoa, hypnosis. Is that, like, what is that? And I'm like, how about you guys just listen? And I had, like, a table of, I think there were about 8 of us, and of the 8 people, there were 2 people that were just looking at me like this, nodding along. And there were other people that you could kind of see their eyes darting around. And then there was one person that I wasn't expecting a response, but afterwards she was like, whoa, that really worked. And I'm like, yeah, that's what hypnosis is. And all I did was just the basic color, sound type of work.
Incredible.
They all could have their eyes open. But it's always fun to catch the people that are like really glued into it. And I'll point at them after and I'll be like, you're highly hypnotizable. You're highly hypnotizable. Just to, anchor it in. And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't. Because there are, signs, but at the end of the day, everybody's hypnotizable.
Yes. Do you use anchors in hypnosis?
So I like to use anchors in a way that I teach people how to create their own anchors. So I'm really responsive to verbal anchors. Where like one of my verbal anchors I will use before sales calls is bag it's bag, but I have to say it like, bro, bag it's bag. I have to add that onto it because that anchors it into the experience. Now I also have other anchors where they're visual anchors. So for me, sometimes just pulling a single image into my mind is enough of an anchor to replicate the feelings, to replicate the sensations, to replicate the experience. And I'll teach people how to do that. But I'll also then like test it with people where I'm like, okay, feel this bad way. Now feel the good way. Now go back and forth. Realize how much control you have over your ability to change the way that you feel, and other types of suggestions and other types of anchors in that sense. When you say anchors, is it close to what I said, or do you see anchors differently? Because I think there's a more on-term definition for anchors within neurolinguistic programming. I think it's close to what I described, but okay.
Very, very similar. Yeah,
Okay.
if not the same. I'm curious what you mean by a visual, like you can visualize something and that.
Yes. So it's kind of like if I have a very pleasant memory of something and I want to tap into those feelings, I have learned that all I have to do is remember. And because I know when you remember something, you have to re-experience it. To re-experience it, you have to relive it. To relive it, you re-feel it. So to remember, I then just feel. And I now know that you don't remember feelings, you just re-feel feelings.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, can you break that down a little bit more?
So if you were to recall a very pleasant memory from your past, maybe your distant past, maybe your not so distant past, where you felt happy, you felt safe, and you felt other pleasant feelings. As you imagine that and remember that memory, you can remember the feelings, but you'll also then notice in your body and in the experience of that memory, it's really not that different than if you felt it right now. You are feeling those feelings. You're not just remembering them. They're present here and now. And then you can just let yourself feel them in this moment. You can bring those from the memory, but you can also just be present in this moment now with those feelings with you. So it is a matter of letting yourself feel, but it is just the reality of how we remember things is we are re-experiencing them. We're reliving them. This is also why your modern talk therapy models don't work. It's just constant reliving and revivifying trauma with no solutions, with no conclusions, with no tactical, here's what to do now. It's just, oh, so tell me again about that time that really sucked in your life where things went wrong and that really bad thing happened. And then they're listening to you talk about it and they're looking at the time. It's like, oh, 50 minutes are up. I'll see you next week. And it's like, what? It's terrible for them. So it is a matter of you're just, the reality of it is you are feeling.
I see. So it's essentially reliving a memory or imagining yourself reliving memory, which then triggers a state change within your body. And then you realize, hey, I can access that state right here in the now, even though it was an event that happened in the past.
Right.
It always has to be a peak experience, or does it have to be a peak experience?
So if you have peak experiences, use peak experiences because there's going to be a more full body remembrance of the feeling. So we have to remember that we are equal parts mind, equal parts body, equal parts soul, equal parts heart. We are a holistic being. We're multidimensional. We're not more mind than we are body. We're not more body than we are mind. So the more that all of you experiences something from a memory, the more you're going to be able to feel that feeling. And the more you're able to feel that feeling, the more you can feel it in the present moment. Now, that being said, if you wanted to use something that's not as intense, you can. You actually might find something that's not as intense to be really helpful to help stay mobilized or to stay stable, to feel more grounded. If you have a very like pleasant, neutral feeling where you're just like, this was a really relaxing, really calming day. Nothing exciting happened, but nothing bad happened. I felt very neutral about it. That experience can be really helpful for someone who's struggling with anxiety, with depression, and they just want to feel normal. So you could use a boring memory, but boring is now subjective. The objective reality of the boring memory is it can help you stabilize. So if it is something that you're trying to create, like, I will use these memory anchors as prep for my own discovery calls and sales calls, and I'll just remember a few of my best calls in my mind. Like, oh, here's how I felt. This was my prospect's response. Here's some of what I did. I'm ready to rock and roll. Now, you can also use the verbal anchors. You can attach that to a phrase. One of my anchors that has worked really well, or really not even an anchor, just a very peculiar affirmation, is I'm a growing boy. Dude, it's working great as far as eating more food, working out more goes, my body growing and me just getting healthier. Because it's a truism. I mean, if your subconscious mind is super young and you're always growing, I mean, who says I'm not a growing boy? Like, why would I not keep growing? I have no need to stop growing. So it's a very powerful, like, I'm a growing boy. So much so that I have my best friend, like, I'll tell him, I'm like, we're growing boys. He's like, yeah, we are. You know, so that's a verbal anchor. And then you can also have like posture anchors. Like, I feel really good when I do this. I just do.
Okay. And you can work, I know you can work with a hypnotist to develop an anchor. Like I created one where it's like just squeezing my hand like this puts me into a state of certainty. So, and that was to go and relive an experience, I believe, if I remember correctly, was we relived an experience that was a peak state where I had absolute certainty. And then we brought that into the now. Could you also just like for example, whatever your notification is that somebody has paid, like a Stripe payment notification, could you somehow use that as an anchor?
I don't see why not.
Cool. You can probably use just about anything as long as you can. Are there certain conditions that make it more easy or make it more helpful?
I would just say if something's super intense, if the state is intense, then you can bring it into the present moment because it's already in the present moment. It's just a matter of helping them realize it's in the present moment.
Interesting. Yeah. Is there can you do a little guided hypnosis right now to end this for like something, if somebody has maybe something they want to change or they want to feel a certain way? Is there something that they can experience hypnosis for themselves while they're listening now, as long as they're not driving?
Yeah, don't do it if you're driving. I did hypnotize a guy while I was driving, though. I've done that before. It's still a little risky because I go into the trance, too. Yeah, the simplest thing is focus in, listener, viewer, focus in on a moment of anxiety. We'll work through anxiety. A lot of people need help working through anxiety. Focus in on something that you experience that causes anxiety. And then remember that experience. And let yourself feel it, knowing that it's okay to feel it. There's no need to run from it. There's no need to numb yourself from it. You're safe to feel it. So feel the anxiety. And now focus in on the feeling of the anxiety, almost as if it were separate from the experience. I just want you to focus on the anxiety. And now what I'd like you to do, focusing on that anxiety and letting yourself feel it, is ask yourself, what color is it? Some of you might say red, blue, green, yellow, pink, purple. The color itself doesn't matter too much as you know the color. It's probably a color. And now I'd like you to ask yourself, what sound does that anxiety make? Is it a voice? Is it an ambiance? What sound does that anxiety make? And then I'd also like you to recognize, where is that feeling of anxiety present in your body? And if you'd like to, you can ask yourself questions about the sensation. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Is it fast? Is it cold? Fast or cold? Hot or cold? And now, knowing the color, knowing the sound, and at least knowing where it's at in your body, it might be your chest, shoulders, legs, you know where. I'd like you to focus on a feeling of relaxation. And mix a little confidence in there for good measure. Now, feeling this confident relaxation, identify its color. Identify its sound. Identify where that confident relaxation dwells in your body. And now what I'd like you to do is focus in on that anxiety again for me, please. And change its color. Bring the confident relaxation and paint over that feeling of anxiety. For example, if anxiety is red and relaxation is blue, make anxiety blue. And just let yourself follow that feeling. Maybe you see a paintbrush. Maybe it's something else. You know what it is. And when you're ready, turn down the sound of the anxiety. Make it very quiet. And then take the sound of the confident relaxation and play it instead. Could be a song, could be something someone said to you. Play that sound now. Noticing any changes in the way your body feels as you do these things. Could be subtle, could be drastic. I really don't know. I'm just a pre-recorded experience. There's no way for me to know. And now feel the anxiety in your body or whatever's left of it. And then feel the confidence in your body, where it's at. And imagine it slowly spreading over your body until it encompasses you, nullifying the anxiety. Just slowly let it spread. I wonder how much better you feel now, because this short, very simple, and I know to be highly effective hypnosis experience. And if you want to know if it worked or not, you're going to have to go do something that scares you a little bit. So viewer discretion is advised, I suppose, but enjoy it.
I love that. That was incredible. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. If people want to follow you on the social medias, if they want to potentially work with you, whether it's quitting porn or removing porn or sex addiction or whatever else that you can help them with, where would they find you?
So right now, best place to find me is on Twitter. I'm still most active on Twitter. I recently changed my handle. It's just now at John Haskins Jr. You should also be able to find me if you search John David Haskins on Twitter. I'm a verified account. Can't miss me. You can also get my book, I Can't Believe How Easy This Is, How to Conquer Screen Addictions with the Power of the Subconscious Mind, by looking up I Can't Believe How Easy This Is on Amazon. My book's the first result. You can also follow me on Instagram. Right now, my Instagram handle is at HypnoStrategist. That's HypnoStrategist, all one word. I will probably be changing that to a variation of my name. I'm embracing the personal brand. I really like the HypnoStrategist, but my name is a lot more powerful.
Yes.
And then also my website, johndavidhaskinsjr.com. Right now it is branded for the quit porn stuff. You want to book a call, go there. And once we get on call, you can just let me know that we're talking about something different, or when I text you, you can tell me there too. It will be a meetup call. The videos and topics will be about porn that you read on the pages. But if I know as soon as we start the convo that you want to talk about something else, we'll talk about something else. If you really want specifics, just DM me on Twitter and we'll figure it out from there.
Beautiful. Anything else you want to say to wrap up?
It's great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. And yeah, I'm excited to see what people get out of this, and yeah, continue to spread the word, because both NLP and hypnosis have been extremely powerful for me. And I think it's one of the most underused modalities, or maybe most isn't the right word, but it's something that people don't understand. They're afraid of.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will help give a better understanding what it is, what it isn't. And, hopefully that experience of them doing the guided hypnosis will help them see how powerful it really is.
Yeah, man. I sure hope so, because hypnosis needs to be like mainstream, because it's a great tool. It's helped me a lot too. So,
Yes.
yeah, thanks again, man. This was a good time. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely.